This podcast discusses true crime, which may entail violence and other material intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, my name is Kayla, and I'm one of the hosts of a podcast called A Little Wicked. On A Little Wicked, we talk about true crime, paranormal cases, cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and everything in between. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And now you can find us on YouTube. So this is actually our first YouTube video, so be sure to like and subscribe. Help us out a little bit so get our feet off the ground. The story that we're starting with today is called The Murder of Kelsey Berreth. So it begins with Kelsey being born on September 15th, 1989 in Washington State. She grew up as a country girl who also went to pilot school and worked as a pilot and flight instructor. As an adult, she met Patrick Frazee on a dating site in 2016, and the two hit it off almost immediately. She moved to Woodland Park, Colorado to be closer to him, but the two did not live together. Patrick was a rancher who lived on a large ranch with his mother. The two had been dating for about a year when Kelsey had found out she was pregnant with their daughter, Kaylee. And at this point, they were engaged but still not living together, as Patrick had told Kelsey that living apart would be cheaper and even declined a house being bought for them by Cheryl, who was Kelsey's mother. Flash forward to November 22nd, 2018, Kelsey was seen on a surveillance footage at a supermarket buying sweet potato casserole ingredients and other things for Thanksgiving dinner. She had plans with Patrick and his family later in the day for dinner. This would be the last time that anybody would see Kelsey alive. December 1st, 2018. Kelsey's mother Cheryl and her brother Clint had not heard from Kelsey since November 22nd and had become concerned. They had been constantly trying to contact her, calling her, texting her, but they had not gotten any answers. Cheryl had then contacted Patrick, who had told Cheryl that he could not be much help, whatever that was supposed to mean. We're not together anymore. This threw Cheryl off, as Kelsey told her mother everything and had not said a word about them not being together anymore, even on the last day they talked, which was November 22nd, when Kelsey was noted to sound happy like her usual self with no sense of anything wrong. So on December 2nd, the two of them had driven from Washington to Kelsey's house in Woodland Park, not finding any trace of Kelsey on the property. The two of them did a sweep of the house, looking for any clue as to what had happened or where she could have gone. While looking through the house, they noted how clean it was, so clean that there was cleaning streaks all over the fridge and counters. They noticed that the thermostat was set to 72, which would be odd if they suspect Kelsey hadn't been there in a few days, because why would somebody leave the heat on if they weren't going to be there? Normally you would turn it down or off if you're not going to be home for a couple days. There were also stale cinnamon rolls on the counter that Cheryl remembered Kelsey saying she was making for Thanksgiving dinner. They also noticed that the bathroom mat was missing from the floor. Cheryl had gotten on the phone with Patrick and asked him if he had seen her and to please try to contact her. He replied with, quote, "I have to check on my cows first, then I'll call her," end quote. Cheryl thought this was odd, since who would put cows as a first priority over a potentially missing person, especially the mother to your child? And while Cheryl was on the phone, Clint did some more investigating on the house and went into the bathroom and saw some spots of blood on the toilet base and in the tub. At this point, they had called the police to come and investigate the home. Police did a search of the home and found no other signs of foul play. And it wasn't until December 6th that a Colorado Bureau investigator crime scene analyst had come in with blood detecting chemicals looking for additional blood stains. She had used the latent bloodstain reagent to see if there was any cleaned up blood, and there was, all over the floor and the bathtub. Another chemical had also turned up bright pink, meaning that whatever blood was there was fresh and had not been sitting long. DNA tests showed that it was in fact Kelsey's blood, and had started to think that this was now a murder investigation due to the amount of blood that was at the scene. It was at this point that police had interviewed Patrick, being that he should have been the last person to see her alive, since he went to her house on the 22nd to pick up Kaylee to take her to his family for Thanksgiving dinner. Patrick had told police that they were no longer together, as Kelsey had ended the relationship the day prior. He told police that he met up with her to pick up Kaylee and to drop off some of Kelsey's stuff, such as a purse, keys to the car, keys to the townhome, and a gun. He explained that he had her gun because she struggled with depression and took it from her for her own protection, hinting to police that Kelsey was suicidal. Her friends, however, when asked this by police, would go on to disagree, saying that she was not a depressed person. On December 4th, they had heard from Ray Sebring, who was Kelsey's boss, who said she had not been to work in a few days, and got a message from Kelsey's phone on November 25th saying that her grandma was so sick and that she would not be into work. He thought the way she was texting him was off, being that she always said Ray with an exclamation point, and plus she always used emojis during their conversation, and this had neither of those aspects. This message was just not like the others. Officer Huber had then attempted to call her, and with no answer, he listed her as an official missing person. It was at this point that the Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the investigation, and agents Greg Slater and Kevin Torres had gone out to the property to look at the vehicles that were left there, a 2006 Corolla and Cheryl's Chevy Silverado. With them, they brought human scent detecting working dogs to see if they could find any trace of Kelsey by the cars. The dog, Lucy, had laid down by the Corolla. They searched it and found a bloody sock on the front seat. At this time, they were unsure of how it had gotten there. The next step was to look into cell phones. Now, they couldn't find Kelsey's cell phone, so they looked at phone records to see the last text messages and where it could have pinged at. Oddly enough, the last known location of her cell phone was Gooding, Idaho, about 800 miles away on November 25th. And before that, records showed that the phone had been traveling together with Patrick for a few days. Police and her family thought this was odd, as she had no reason to be out that far. Cheryl had begun to suspect that Patrick had taken Kelsey's phone and done something with it, and told police about her suspicions. They looked at her last text messages, which were mainly between Patrick and her going over Thanksgiving dinner and making times to call each other throughout the week. Then on November 25th, a text came from Kelsey's phone to Patrick saying, quote, "Do you even love me?" end quote. To which Patrick's phone had replied, quote, "Why would I bend over backwards and stand behind you through everything if I didn't? So to answer your question, yes, I do," end quote. It was then theorized that Patrick had faked 19 phone calls between them and had been texting himself, pretending to be Kelsey. Phone records show that his phone was staying on the ranch on that Sunday while her phone was traveling west out of Colorado without him. On December 4th, Patrick had met up with his brother, Sean, who was a police officer, and Sean could sense that something was off about his brother. Patrick went on to tell him about Kelsey's drinking problem that no one else knew she had. This is speculated to be false, as no one else has come forward about her being an alcoholic. Police also took Patrick's phone to look through records, and later that day, he was noted to go to his friend Joseph Moore's house and asked to use his phone to talk about horses. Joseph let him and only heard a small part of the conversation, in which he heard, quote, "If I get arrested because they've taken my phone, I'm going to have my friend call you. It will be from this number, so come get those horses," end quote. Later on, when looking back through his phone, Joseph noted that it was an Idaho area code that Patrick had called. Police had also managed to get a hold of the neighbor's security camera footage, being that one of the cameras happened to point directly at Kelsey's front door. They saw Patrick, Kelsey, and Kaylee going into the house, but later Patrick is seen alone, unknown whether he was coming or going. This was between the times of 1:30 to 1:45 to 3:30. He is seen leaving with Kaylee to go to his family dinner with his brother and his mother. Altogether from those cameras, 34 photos were taken of Patrick coming and going from the house. Patrick was starting to show some more odd behavior as time went on. On December 5th, he had gone to the bank and demanded that they give him the footage from their security cameras from November 22nd from their ATM to prove to police where he was at a certain time. The woman he was talking to explained to him that the footage gets erased after a few days and replaced with new footage, so he couldn't get the footage that he wanted. This made Patrick livid, so he left. Now, word was spreading through the news about Kelsey's disappearance, and people knew who Patrick was to her. The woman from the bank had the good idea to call police and tell them what had just transpired in the bank and who was just in there demanding the footage. Investigator Stephanie Courtney was from the DA's Special Investigation Unit and was assigned to this case. She had looked into surveillance cameras on where Patrick had been on November 22nd. She found him at Williams Furniture, an ATM, and Walmart. All the while, he had a large black tote in the back of his truck, and when looking at the timestamps, they noticed that after he had gone to Kelsey's house, the tote had been turned around. Now the question was why? Patrick was always seen as an interesting person to those around him when it came to Kelsey. Friends would go on to tell police during interviews that Patrick would never come to see her and Kaylee, that Kelsey had to be the one to always come see him, and that she was struggling to balance being a parent, their relationship, a job, and the commute to come see Patrick, and that the relationship just seemed strained. They recalled him being emotionally abusive towards Kelsey, and they were not the only ones who noticed this. Joseph Moore, the friend mentioned earlier, had witnessed him verbally abusing Kelsey when she was having a hard time wrangling calves on the ranch. Later on, Joseph had recalled a time when Patrick was really worrying him, as he was talking about how children go missing all the time from playgrounds. This concerned Joseph, as he had no idea why Patrick would be saying this, to which Patrick would reply with, "I'm only kidding." What really concerned Joseph is the day when Patrick said, "I figured out a way to kill her. Hey, if there's no body, there's no crime, right?" Again, Patrick played this off as he was only joking around. Cheryl, Kelsey's mother, had recalled the day that Kaylee was born. She was born prematurely, so no one, not even Patrick, could come in to see the baby after she was born, as she was just not stable yet. Patrick was so infuriated and behaved so poorly that social services took Kaylee away to foster care afterwards until they were sure that Kelsey was not being physically abused. Cheryl recalls that afterward, Patrick made comments and jokes about wanting to kill the nurse who would not let him in the room. Patrick's erratic behavior became more apparent when on December 11th, he went to Verizon to ask them a few questions and to change the PIN on his cell phone. The issue was he wanted to change the PIN on a phone he did not have, presumably Kelsey's. He then went on to ask the worker if police would be able to get info from a phone if it was smashed with a hammer. The guy that Patrick was talking to was beginning to get freaked out and excused himself to go to the bathroom and waited until Patrick left before calling the police to tell them about the strange encounter. The police had been suspicious of Patrick and had been able to get a warrant for a search of his house on December 12th. The search started on December 14th, where they were looking for 22 missing things from Kelsey's house. After hours of looking, they had left with 6 bags of evidence, such as clothes she may have worn the day she was last seen, keys, receipts, phones, a tablet, 50 9mm rounds, and 2 shell casings. They also got swabs from a Swiffer mop, a bleach bottle, and Simply Green cleaner, all of which had traces of blood on them. They also found a small envelope of 4 teeth and another tooth by the burn pit. However, they were unable to get DNA off of these teeth to prove it was Kelsey's. There was also a list found that was a list of people that Kaylee was to go to in case anything happened to Patrick, but Kelsey was not on that list. Phone records had shown police that Patrick was in touch with someone else during the week that Kelsey went missing, a woman named Crystal Lee who lived in Twin Falls, Idaho. The FBI, who had now gotten involved with Kelsey's case, called Crystal to see what she knew about Patrick and Kelsey. At first, she denied really knowing Patrick and said that she did not know who Kelsey was and never heard of her until her disappearance. Without further questioning, she changed her story to say that she knew Patrick just a little bit and only wanted to talk to him about horses and other ranch stuff. When asked when the last time she talked to him was, she told him that it was a month and a half ago, but records show it was in the last couple weeks. However, the truth about Crystal is that they had known each other from after high school and had started an affair in 2006, when Crystal was already married and had 2 children of her own. She would go on to get pregnant by Patrick, who then told her to get an abortion, so she did. She did anything that Patrick asked of her. Eventually, the two grew apart for a few years, and in that time, Crystal had gotten divorced. The two had picked back up where they left off in 2017, 8 months before Kelsey had gone missing and started having another affair. Phone records had shown that they spoke on the phone 3 times in November 24th in the morning and 2 more times in the afternoon. All the while, Crystal was claiming to have been at his house all day. Police didn't really believe this because who calls someone if you're at their house all day? They also saw that she had purchased a new phone on December 4th, the same day that Patrick's phone was confiscated by police. The FBI then interviewed Chad Lee, Crystal's ex-husband, and he told them that after they had interviewed Crystal, she had called him and told him that she was with Patrick on November 24th through 25th, looking at a horse that he was offering. This was a different story she had previously told him, in which she said she was with girlfriends all weekend. So, the FBI then interviewed one of her friends, Megan, who Crystal said she was driving her car to Colorado. Megan confirmed this, saying she frequently switched cars for one reason or another. She also told police that Crystal had confided to her that Patrick had asked Crystal to kill Kelsey on 3 separate occasions. Michelle Stein, another of Crystal's friends, also came forward and said the same thing. She said that on October 22nd, 2017, Crystal had told her that Patrick wanted her to kill Kelsey. She also said that Crystal called her saying he wanted her to take care of his baby mama. Michelle said that Crystal was upset and scared about it, saying that Crystal told her that Kelsey was going to take him to court for custody of Kaylee. However, evidence shows that it was Patrick who challenged Kelsey for custody. Michelle said she told Crystal to call police, but she didn't. Michelle also did not call because she did not know Patrick's name at the time and had no other information. On December 20th, the FBI sat down with Crystal and her attorney where Crystal talked for 4.5 hours, coming clean about everything that Patrick had said to her and wanted her to do. Crystal said she would spill everything in exchange for a plea deal. She would agree to plead guilty to evidence tampering and admitted to getting rid of the gun, tossing keys in a canyon, and destroying Kelsey's phone. This was a lesser charge and would only get 3 years max in prison. She said that Patrick told her that Kelsey was abusing him and Kaylee, so she had to go. This was when he asked her 3 times to kill Kelsey. The first attempt was with a poisoned Starbucks caramel macchiato. Crystal had purchased one and gone to Kelsey's house, knocked on her door, and said she knew that Kelsey had helped her dogs get out of trouble earlier in the day and wanted to reward her with a coffee. Kelsey said she did no such thing, but she took the drink anyway. Crystal then said she couldn't put the poison in it, which made Patrick mad. So he gave her a second attempt where he would have Crystal hit Kelsey in the head with a pipe at her house. Crystal drove again the 12 hours to get there, but again she chickened out and couldn't do it. The third attempt was with a baseball bat, but once again Crystal could not bring herself to do it. Phone records show a call between Patrick and Crystal on Thanksgiving Day at 4:30 where Patrick had told her, "You need to get out here now, you've got a mess to clean up." It was at that point that Crystal knew something happened to Kelsey. She drove to the house a few days later with cleaning supplies, bleach, hair nets, gloves, and trash bags, and when she got into the house, she saw blood everywhere, but there was not a body in the house. Crystal had spent 3 to 4 hours cleaning the mess, purposefully leaving behind the clues in the bathroom for authorities to find. Patrick had told her to be on the lookout for a tooth that may have fallen into a vent, and she did find that tooth. She had emptied 6 trash bags full of bloody articles, and while cleaning, she had begun to worry if she would be next since she knew too much. Afterwards, Crystal went to Patrick's where he admitted to her that he blindfolded Kelsey and told her that they were going to play a candle-smelling game. It was then that once she was blindfolded that he had beaten her with a baseball bat and put her body in the black tote in his truck after she had died. She had gone with him to his house where he said he had stored the body on a privately leased ranch where he set the body in a barn on top of bales of hay. Investigators would go to that spot where they found dark spots and a body-sized indent in the hay, along with taking human scent-seeking hounds, where one of them detected a human scent on the hay. Afterwards, Patrick and Crystal were at Patrick's ranch in front of the tote, which was in a 2x4x2 deep burn trough. Patrick had lit the tote on fire. Crystal noted that in the background, she noticed that his mom was watching them. And as a side note, I think that his mom knew what he had done. Now, his mother did not like Kelsey. She would berate her and call her a prostitute, among many other names, and just did not get along with Kelsey. There was also an incident where on Patrick's phone, they had found a Facebook message from his mom that was a gif of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz with the quote, "Yay, the witch is dead," in all caps. Let's go back to Joseph Moore for a second. One day, the two of them were hanging out after Kelsey's disappearance, and Patrick was again acting very strangely. He told Joseph that maybe Kelsey had gone up to the pike and killed herself, and that her blood might be on me from a nosebleed, in case police found blood on any of his clothes. He asked Joseph, "Do you think our phone calls are taped?" Joseph also noted that Patrick seemed to be upset about the investigation as a whole, saying things like, "Why can't they just drop it? I don't understand why this is a big deal." And then he said, "Man, if I had known it would have blown up this big, I never would have." And then he caught himself. After Patrick left, Joseph called Patrick's attorney to tell him the strange conversation they had just had. It was at this point that the FBI had an arrest warrant out for Patrick. On December 21st, Patrick was officially arrested. While in jail, he befriends a petty criminal with gang relations named Jacob Bentley on September 2019. Keep that in mind. The trial started on October 28, 2019. The prosecution had gone through the blood-soaked evidence found on Patrick's property and the photos of him coming and going from Kelsey's home. The defense has stated that Patrick did not have blood on him in any of the photos, nor did they find any blood-soaked clothes in the search of his property. But this isn't to say that he wasn't wearing some type of covering to cover himself from any of the blood. On November 7th, Crystal took the witness stand and told her story all over again about how Patrick had told her to kill Kelsey and what had happened with the tote. The defense had grilled into Crystal, saying she must be lying and only saying these things because she took a plea deal for a lesser charge. So far, the trial was going in Patrick's favor. That is, until Jacob Bentley came forward on November 15th to the prosecutors about how they need to put Patrick away for life. Throughout their time in jail, Patrick had smuggled 17 messages to Jacob, each of them urging him to use his gang connections to make people disappear. The list he had was the DA, Dan May, members of the FBI team, Joseph Moore, Cheryl, Chad Lee, Michelle Stein, Wendy Clark, and Crystal. He wanted them to dispose of the bodies in the desert. On November 18th, the court met one more time before jury deliberation where all of this information came out about the hit list. After 4 hours, the jury had found Patrick guilty in the murder of Kelsey Berreth and was sentenced to life without parole. It is unknown why he wanted to kill Kelsey, and her body has not been found to this day. And that is the story of Kelsey Berreth, the tragic tale of a mother taken too soon from her family for reasons unknown. He really didn't have a motive or any reason. There's never a good reason to murder, but for the most part there's a motive, and he didn't really have a motive. He just, I don't know if he was just wanted to break up with her, wanted her gone, I'm not sure. But thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe my video and subscribe to our channel. Find our podcast where you can hear more discussion between my co-host Lexi and I on these cases. And I'll see you guys later.